Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. That was a really warm introduction. I feel so humbled to be standing here before you today. Assalamu alaikum and a very good morning to every one of you. I'm sure I need not to echo how proud I am to see the huge turn-up we have on a Sunday morning. And as you can see, I'm the only rose among the 3 other thorns within our panelists. And that gives me the pleasure to kick off our event today and start the conversation going. So before this, we see a video that gives us a rough background, an introduction to the topic that we want to discuss today. And that is, Ustazah Rauf rightly pointed out the subject matter here, which is about fake news. And in some interpretations, we hear it as false information, misinformation, as well as disinformation. But despite the variation, in essence, it relatively gives the same meaning. And what we are talking about today is the spreading of unverified information. And in the video again, Ustaz Kazak interestingly pointed out that fake news has existed since like years ago. It was even mentioned in the Quran. And it's not something new, it's not a new phenomenon. And then he also pointed out and shared with us practical ways to tackle the issue of fake news. And we also see from the victim's point of perspective how the auntie urged us to be more careful when we share information. And if you realize, at the end of the video, Ustazah Rauf actually concluded the video with a timely reminder that says, check before you share. So what's with all this hoo-ha about fake news? Why is it everyone is keep on telling you to check before you share, check before you share? Why is this Ustazah, this sister, standing before you, suggesting you, from today onwards, check everything that you receive, and especially before you spread information? And that is because today, we live in a digital age. We are constantly bombarded with information. And this is especially because like 20, 30 years ago, it's normal for us to approach a teacher when you want to ask a question, a clarification question. You only go to Google if you need it. But today we have passed the normalization of Googling information. It's the Internet of Things. It's not just going to the search engine now. But what we are doing now is that we are seeing a lot of websites cropping up in the Internet. And then we have the vlogs, we have YouTube. I mean, social media by itself, it has changed dramatically from just a platform for you to get to know one another, but today we use it to also spread information. Same to go for WhatsApp. You know, you also use that information, that platform to spread information. So it becomes really overwhelming that we need to know how to decipher the good from the bad. So I give you an analogy. Say today I'm being so gracious, so generous. I'm giving each and every one of you a huge bag of 100 apples. I know it's so random, but it's just 100 apples, okay? You'll be like, oh wow, I've never gotten like 100 apples at one go. Like, what do I do with it? So the thing is, what you want to know is, you want to know how many rotten apples, how many good apples. Maybe we have some picky eaters within your audience. You want to know Fiji apples, good apples, green apples, red apples. So likewise, we need to know what's good, what's positive, and what's healthy for our consumption. On one hand, we know what we ought to do, what we should do, but on the other hand, here comes the challenge, because it's very, very tempting, because this information and articles, they are packaged with catchy headlines. You will see very impactful images, real-life videos, and then you see snippets of Quranic verses, hadith, quotes from scholars, and it really essentially boosts its credibility. And that's how the article is designed. See, it taps on our heuristics, and heuristic is mental shortcuts. And when you see an information, it confirms a certain belief that you have, you straight away jump on it, you believe, and you act upon it, and you will share. So then comes the question, as Muslims, what do we do when we receive this information? In the Quran, it says, بَعْدَ أَعُوذُ بِاللَّهِ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ الرَّجِيمِ وَلَا تَقْفُ مَا لَيْسَ لَكَ بِهِ عِلْمٍ إِنَّ السَّمْعَ وَالْبَصَرَ وَالْفُؤَادَ كُلُّ أُولَٰئِكَ كَانَ عَنْهُ مَسْئُولًا. And it's interesting because in the Quran, it has already stated, it outlined a guideline on how do we tackle what we do when we receive inaccurate or unverified information? So the verse starts with, do not share things that you do not have knowledge of. And that be it anything, any information, unverified information we receive in as-sam'a, from the hearing, wal basara, what you read from your sight. And then one fu'ada. Interestingly, why the heart? Because when you see and you hear, it creates an impulse. An impulse is a trigger, a force for you to act upon it. When you believe in it, you'll act upon it. And that's likely most of the time you'll share with it, with a friend next to you, to your social media networks, and to like anyone you know on WhatsApp. And then it ends with kullu ulaika kana anhu mas'ula. And if you share something that you actually do not know if it's true or not, and all these shall be questioned in the eyes of Allah. So in essence, the verse is seeking for us to be a responsible person, a responsible consumer, a responsible learner, and likewise, a responsible netizen in cyberspace. So to firstly be responsible with yourself, whenever you receive an unverified information, just stop and think before the information gets the better of you. So now I just share with you a case example about the Lion airplane crash. I'm sure some of you might be familiar with it already. So once the news about the airplane crash hit the news headlines, there was numerous posts on Facebook and WhatsApp spreading like wildfire. And in the post itself, it claims to have images and footages about what happened prior to the video. So this is actually the post that was circulating around. And why is it that people are more likely to share this kind of information post-tragic or disaster? Because these sort of events happen in a mysterious way. So what happens is that it creates a mental gap. It creates a mental void. So when these sort of footages gets your attention, surfaces, and you read it, it fills that mental gap. It ends your curiosity. Before this, you were kept in the dark, but suddenly you sort of know what actually happened. You have control of things. And suddenly it's not a mystery anymore. And so that's why you tend to share it with other people. But just later to know that it's actually fake news. These are footages that were recycled from past airplane crashes. So what is it actually that we are believing? And that is why it's important for you to check before you read and share any information. And this is likewise not just when you receive information, but also when you go to the internet and read information. Because extremist groups package their propaganda or their messages in really sophisticated fashion. It's not really like an immature or dodgy sort of website, but really it's impactful images, glossy videos, things that you would comes to you as a form of credibility. And that's how they tend to weave the ideas, the extremist ideas, as segregational teachings. And if you are not careful, you'd subconsciously start to feed into these information that challenges your principles, that challenges your values that you were being brought up with. So it's important for you to always stop when you receive information that you are uncertain, before it starts to influence your emotions, your attitude, and then influence how you react to that information. And so by doing that, you're being responsible to yourself, not just on the spiritual level, but also on a practical level. You are safeguarding yourself from fitnah, you are safeguarding yourself from spreading fitnah. And it's important because you wouldn't want to spread falsehood and lead others to also believe in the untrue. In the Quran, Surah An-Nur, verse 5, which was also mentioned by Ustaz Kizak, it says that when you propagate or you spread something that you are unsure of, you take it lightly. You consider it light because, what's the big deal? It's just like a press of a button. You don't really see what's the consequence. But in the eyes of Allah, it's great. And that's the matter of fact of social media. It conceals, it leads us to consequences that we do not see. It creates tension within society. It leads people to the loss of livelihood. It pushes people to unfortunate circumstances. And from the video we see, that Makcik was already a victim of fake news. Not just that, but to really extreme cases such as death. So if I can share with you this case, which was picked up by Straits Times 2 years ago, what happened was that the late Mr. Abdul Ghafur was doing his pilgrimage. He fell, he sprained his ankle, and then unfortunately, he contracted a skin-eating disease. It spread so vigorously that half of his leg was amputated. He was then warded at the Jordan hospital. So he was slapped with a huge hospital bill of $123,000, and his family was pleading for people to donate and help them get off the financial burden on social media. But how is this case unfortunate? Just a week before this case, what happened was that there was a post going on Facebook saying that a family got into a tragic accident. And simultaneously, there were people who were trying to raise funds and make donation drives claiming for the family. And people actually came forward. A lot of people started donating money. And only to know that a day or 2 days later, the family came and gave up a statement and said that they did not plead for any money. People felt cheated. And it's so unfortunate that this case only happened a few days later, where people were already skeptical, people were apprehensive. They're confused, they don't know if it's true or not. When in this case, it was actually true. The family were in dire need of money. So that's the thing though, when we spread online falsehood, we don't know what is true and what's not true. So but now I believe we already understand, the dangers. I can see grey clouds hovering all over your head. You're kind of lost. So the question is, what do we do now? So first thing first, whenever you receive an unverified information, check to the source. And this is especially if the information that you're receiving, typically huge in caps lock, very dramatic, so many exclamation marks, random quotes of Quran, Hadith, and scholars, check. Especially Google, if it does not hit the news headlines, likely it is false. Secondly, it is okay for you to search information online, but go to the sources that are reliable and credible. So basically, I posed that question: can we participate in celebrations of other faith festivities? So on your right is just a random portal, a random Islamic portal. I'm sure some of you also do that. And it gives a very negative answer and says that we cannot participate or even communicate or be friends with people from the other race and religion. And that's problematic because how do you go about your everyday life? We interact a lot with non-Muslims. So check against, say, the Office of Mufti Irshad Contemporary Series or other websites that are based in Singapore. Because we live in such a unique society, we have Islam suiting our needs and culture here. If you want to donate to donation drive, post-disaster relief, we have reputable organizations like BAPA, RLA, and a lot of organizations out there that do post-disaster relief. So give them a call, check if they are on the website. If you are curious about the halal certification, go to Halal SG. Those guys are really on the roll, especially on Twitter. And last but not least, is have an ustaz, have a scholar, have a cleric for you to ask any information. Or know someone who knows an ustaz, be it your ustaz from your madrasa, from your mosque. Have someone. I feel like it's a dying culture that we don't go to an ustaz or an expert to ask a question. I do feel it's a dying learning culture. And because most of our youth today are on social media, that's where most of our young asatizas are today. So as you can see, some of them like Ustaz Mizi Wahid, who else, case in point, hold Q&A questions, take your questions on Instagram, slide them a DM. I will assure you that most of our asatizas are very invested in answering your questions. So I hope that these nuggets, give you a rough understanding on what to do when you receive unverified information. I understand it's very tricky, especially to navigate through this phenomenon and terrain of online falsehood. And that's the thing though, in Singapore, we have yet to have a fact-checking platform like many other countries do have. So if anything that I can leave you is be careful in these two circumstances, especially post-disaster relief. Whenever you get information, Google it, because if it doesn't appear on Google, that's likely that it's fake. And secondly, and unfortunately, is when there's viral posts going on about a demise of person or a tragic accident, be careful because you are in a state of vulnerability. They will tap into your feeling of sadness, sympathy, empathy. So check the veracity of the information. And so I hope I leave you with all these nuggets that you can slowly practice and start implementing when you receive information online. And for that, I will leave you a very timely reminder to check before you share and to spread facts and not rumors. Thank you so much.